Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Al-Azouzi from easymedicaldevice.com, and today we'll try to help you understand the last MDCG guidance, so MDCG 2023-4, and I have with me Erik Vollebregt, our preferred lawyer for that. So Erik, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thanks for having me, Munir, and thanks for making me giggle at the start always. It's it's always a pleasure to start off these episodes.
Exactly. No, I think we need really some people like you to help us deep dive on those kind of communication that are coming from the European Commission. And yeah, I hope we can really provide those information and help the audience, because there was a lot of comments, if I can say, that were amazing from day one. And you told me that you went also to some conferences and there was also some comments there. So then, yeah, just to have a clear understanding mainly of that. But just quickly for the audience, can you just make a small introduction of yourself?
Yes, I'm Erik Vollebregt. I'm a huge devices nerd, a weaponized consultant, if you will, a lawyer, working in the medical devices field for several decades by now, 2.5 almost. And yeah, I know the MDR and the IVDR literally inside out, backwards and forwards. And
you have written a book about it also.
Yes, to say, as they say, I wrote a book about it, that too. I blog about it. And yeah, basically devices are all day, every day work for me.
Exactly, yeah. So as we said, we'll try to deep dive on this MDCG guidance. So was it a surprise first for you that we had this kind of guidance that is coming out, because it came out last week? For us, this episode will be heard next week. So mainly, was this a surprise, or was there some kind of understanding why this guidance came out?
Well, I think I know why the guidance came out, because there was clearly a need to clarify these subjects. On the other hand, and also, I mean, these are the things that, for me, that the contents of the guidance were not so much a surprise, because when I read it, I was like, yeah, okay, this is all logical, makes sense. This is exactly what I've been advising clients so far. Because basically what I think that the guidance does is really take people by the hand and show them, like, look, if you do this kind of thing, then it implies this kind of regulatory consequences. And I think this MDCG is a bit different from a lot of the other documents that they made, where they basically, the MDCG sometimes has a bit of a way of quoting the law back at you, providing a lot of definitions that are not in the MDR or the IVDR, and then writing up something that is quite vague and not that practical. I think here they really try to do their best to be very practical. But then what happens is that you see people accuse the MDCG of being too directive in the examples that they give, and that they say, well, are we then put in a regulatory straitjacket for these things and so on? Now, obviously not. But I think what the MDCG tried to do is to give a very practical way of showing how you work with combinations of devices and other components that are not necessarily a device themselves, not necessarily an accessory, and where one of those is software, and that they try to put that in examples to basically show you, okay, this is what it implies. So it's not, I don't think it's really a straitjacket. It's just a very practical way to try and explain to people. If you look at Annex 1, Section 13.1 and 13.5, the ones on combination of devices and on interoperability and compatibility, what that looks like in practice. I think this is basically what they try to do, and I think they I mean, they didn't cover all the possible permutations. I think it still can be improved. For example, the IVDR was not mentioned at all, which I think is well, it's a missed opportunity. What I also found is that they don't mention in-house produced devices, for example, which is also an interesting constellation for this. But I've understood that this is also, it's the first version, so the MDCG is open to new comments. And yeah, so basically this is going to be, I think, a bit of a living document.
Yeah, and when you read this guidance, so as a reminder, this guidance is mainly, as you've said, for software companies that are using also some hardware and the combination and the interoperability in both. When you read this guidance, I think for me, when I read it the first time, I think they were really targeting like smartphones, like iPhone, Samsung, Huawei, etc. All those kind of smartphones that are used, including some applications for medical devices, and then saying that you are building the application, but you have also to validate that the software, that the hardware that is used for it is valid for a medical device application, or that it is the purpose for that. Because mainly what we are saying is mainly that the manufacturer of the smartphone, maybe he never mentioned that the purpose of this device is for medical purposes. So then you have to validate all this. So I suppose this was really the target mainly of this MDCG.
Yeah, and that's also logical, because what you see is that more and more companies are software companies, right? So what they don't develop their own hardware. And what is better for a software company than to rely on a general purpose hardware that is off the shelf, and preferably that consumers already have, right? That makes it a lot easier. But then, of course, that also creates the problem that if you want it to be a medical device, you also want it to function reliably and safely and have the performance that you want, which is not limited to the software alone, right? Because if you say, for example, I don't know, let's say you have an app that can take a picture of your skin and then detect skin anomalies, and then you have an AI algorithm interpreting the skin anomalies. Well, then you can say, yeah, but it's only the AI doing something. So why would I need to validate the phone, or the camera? I think if you say that, then you are really overlooking things, because it's a bit like, let's say, for example, I have a car and I want to put extra large wheels underneath. Then you can also say, yeah, but the car has been type approved. What's the problem, right? But you still want a safe combination in the end, because the patient relies on the combination. And if you have, for example, a camera in a smartphone that has difficulties making pictures under certain light conditions, for example, or is known to produce less results under those light conditions, then you need to account for that in your software, and maybe include a warning saying, oh, I see that the light conditions are not good, go to a place with brighter light. And not just say like, oh, I write my software in isolation and then I am fine. But the people that think that, those are the ones I mainly see complain about the situation. Or the people that would also like to develop their own hardware but don't, and then have to rely on off-the-shelf hardware from big tech companies. And then they're like, yeah, you can't talk to these tech companies. No, that is true, but then you always have the option to develop your own hardware if you don't like that situation, I think.
But is it also an opportunity now for those hardware manufacturers to take this MDCG and think for themselves, to say, okay, maybe we can provide already to those kind of people approved, validated for medical purpose
Absolutely.
hardware?
Yeah. What you could do, for example, is, depending on the specific elements, these hardware manufacturers are often actually quite transparent about the specifications of the hardware. So you can work with that. But I mean, yeah, if you, especially a company like Google, I could imagine that they might set up some kind of developer program where they will share more details about the specifications of the sensors of a phone, for example, to help people achieve better results. Yeah,
and which can also help the Google, because mainly all the manufacturers of medical devices will then can choose their phones or their application or their phones for that, instead of going to another one.
That's a strategy. I know Apple is notoriously vigilant about keeping its walled garden walled. So that will be the kind of company that will probably not do that. But yeah, I mean, companies that approach this in another way could even set up whole development programs for this. Why not? Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a manufacturer, if I know that a certain company is already providing the tools that are already certified, validated, etc., and that it will make minimum work for me, I suppose my best strategy is to go for this kind of validate my software with this kind of tool instead of going to others, because mainly it helps me a lot. So I hope it's a message also for those manufacturers that that can hear us and maybe take this opportunity also for that. But when we are talking about validation of hardware, as you said, I am a software company. I have to validate hardware. So is there any specific requirement, or it's the same as any other devices? I suppose it's the validation.
Yeah, basically it's the same as any other device, because let's say, for example, let's take an oximeter, oximeter. So something to measure oxygen saturation. Well, you can do that, for example, by either purchasing a Bluetooth-enabled oximeter from the shelf, right? I mean, there's companies that make them. They are certified as medical devices. They can connect to your phone, and they will send measurements to your phone. But what you can also do is you can also take your phone and then put your finger on the camera and on the flash, and then your phone can also detect it through the lens. Now the problem there is, of course, if you are going to do that by means of software, normally you would need to know what specifications the hardware has in order to write software that can actually make reliable sense of the input data, because otherwise it's input is garbage in, garbage out, which you don't want. So that's where the difference is, and where if you have software, you need to know how to work with the data that the sensors that you use generate. And if you choose, like, for example, an iPhone camera for that, then you need to know what an iPhone camera can do in order to know if your software can draw valid conclusions off of it. And that's completely logical. I mean, this shouldn't be a shock to people, because if you would make an active device yourself to measure, you would also need to know that it actually measures what you think it measures. So that why should such an off-the-shelf computing platform with sensors like a phone be any different? I never understood that.
And one other point, as you've said also about these kind of platforms that are available to everyone, like iPhone or Galaxy, etc. As you've said, we have to understand the characteristic of the camera or sensors or whatever that is inside, but we have also to have a look at any changes to that. So actually, I validate my software for this smartphone with this camera, but if suddenly tomorrow iPhone wants to change their camera, I have to be aware to redo the validation with the new camera or the new specification also. So there is more, if I can say, regulatory, not regulatory, but some technical updates or linked to with those companies.
Yeah, that's a fact of life. If you rely on somebody else's hardware, somebody else's software, and somebody else's sensors, I've seen people complain about that on LinkedIn too. Yeah, then they unilaterally upgrade the operating system. Yeah, well, it's nice that we will also have safe operating systems, so that's good. But yeah, this is what being an actual devices company is about. That if you don't produce your own hardware and your own software partially, then you need to monitor what happens. And then, for example, you would need to be in a beta test program for the new operating system, for example. And all these big tech companies have beta test programs for new versions of the OS, where you can already test if your app works in the new OS and all these things. So, I mean, again, companies that complain about that are, I think, maybe not suitable to be medical devices companies, because first of all, they say, we hate PMS, we think it's stupid, we think it's useless. You need to just see eMark and then basically forget about and only add functionality. it's yeah, that's the way it works. If you make these choices and you basically make yourself dependent on other people that are more powerful than you and do not release software updates on your.
Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
Calendar, yeah, then that is the train that you are on.
And one other thing is we hear also the message sometimes that, oh, but you know, those big giants, they will never release to us those information. We don't know about that, etc. So is it like also for them an opportunity to choose somebody that is really reliable instead of going maybe to big giants that are maybe available to everybody, but maybe not good enough to work with those manufacturers?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you choose, right? Whether or the question is always, would these big companies disclose enough specifications about their operating system and the sensors on their hardware for you to be able to validate the medical device? Well, that is for you to decide, because this is what you have to do as a manufacturer, right? If you rely on this hardware in combination with your software, then you need to know about these things and you need to test it. And if you think that these big companies are not helping you enough, or you want to know more than they actually want to tell you, yeah, then you need to either decide, am I going to fight them for this information? Or should I maybe use another platform?
So one other question that we had also, that there is the before and after the MDCG guidance. Before the MDCG guidance, it was logical, but not written. Now it's logical, but written somewhere. So do you think there will be a change?
I would actually put it a bit differently. I would say it was logical and it was written in the law.
Yeah.
And if you thought about how to apply the law, you could know what to do. And after the MDCG, now it is not only logical and written in the law, but it's also been explained in a lot of detail, where you now see people complain that they think it's too much detail because it limits them in their options.
But will this also change the way a notified body will do their audits now if they are going through that, or it was already done like that maybe before?
I think you might see some changes, because notified bodies like details, because if you have more details, you can make better checklists for audits. So yes, this might lead to a bit more detail in the audits, but that has the advantage that there should also be less discussion about interpretation of concepts that were maybe a bit more open to interpretation. Like, for example, the connection system has to be reliable and safe. What the frick does that mean in terms of, right? So there was a lot abstract risk management involved. And I think there still is also after this guidance, but the guidance gives a bit more direction in what risks you actually need to manage.
So is this also, so what we are talking about now today, is it like European only, or other countries are also doing that or thinking of doing that? Or maybe, yeah, they will take the example of Europe to also change their or clarify their law?
That's always an option. What you see is, of course, that especially the Americans have also done a lot in the field of hardware and software, and I've never seen them give any regards to what is happening in Europe in that respect. Rather, they would be active in the IMDRF and see if they can harmonize Europe to the FDA standards, which I think they've been very successful at. And which I think is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because Europe and the US together are like a huge market. So the more regulatory convergence there, the better, I would think. And for other markets, yeah, I don't know. I think that usually you see the convergence on a legal provision level and not so much on guidance level. Is my experience. Although, of course, if they would write local guidance, yeah, they might be inspired by MDCG guidance.
So in terms of so this guidance that we said was coming out last week. So since then, was there any? You said that you were at Top Right in Lisbon.
Yeah,
So
Top Right in Lisbon.
Was there
Yeah.
any comments out of this conference, for example, on this?
Yeah, we had quite a lively session on more generally on medical software as a medical device. So this was also discussed, and basically there were some pretty high level questions about it. I think I saw a lot more feedback and heartfelt drama on LinkedIn when discussing this guidance. I think some people completely misunderstood it, or I don't know, went off on some really weird wild goose chases. And but there was a lot of good discussion already on it. I think the TOPRA conference was the first one where there was a panel that was actually discussing this, I think. And we also had the good luck that, of course, we had our delegate from the Portuguese competent authority from Infarmed on the panel, Mariana, who was also one of the persons actually writing the document. So that was quite a nice scoop. Yeah, I told her we had dinner before the conference. I was like, Mariana, this was really excellent that you could release this just before the conference, because now we have a nice scoop.
Exactly. That's great. And in terms of this guidance, so because before you said, maybe there was the miss about the IVDR. If you have to make a version 2 now, what would be maybe some proposal that you can make to the MDCG to say, maybe include this or include that also, or maybe change this or remove that?
I would clarify that this also applies to the IVDR, because the way I have read it, basically the provisions in the IVDR on a combination of devices are identical to those in the MDR, except with the difference that the IVDR does not contain Article 22 on systems or procedure packs. And this is one of the explicit options mentioned in the document. So I think there you would need to have an interesting discussion on how the concept of kit under the IVDR relates to the concept of a system under the MDR. And that is, of course, these are really different things, because a kit is a CE-marked unitary device that can consist of multiple components, and a system is not CE-marked as such, except in the version of 22 sub 4. So basically, you could say that I think the way I read it is basically everything they say about section 22 sub 4 would be analogous to a kit under the IVDR.
Okay. And in terms of other aspects, is it like enough or?
No, I think what they, and that's also something I basically, so I when I spoke about this and had the opportunity to communicate my wish list, because I had Mariana captive on my panel anyway. My wish list would be that it would also be, actually it was not my panel, it was Cecilia Cruz's panel, but I was on it. But I had a captive panel, so I could say what I wanted when it was my turn. So my wish list would be, yes, also address the IVDR. So for example, also factor a concept of kit in it. And also address in-house produced devices, because especially this kind of combination between software and hardware is also something that we see a lot in health institutions, where they combine, for example, smartwatches with software, or Holter devices with software, all kinds of wearables that are used in very clever ways. So I think that would be a really interesting one to also include. Yeah, and then of course what they could also do is maybe just work a little bit more, provide a little bit more detail on what the technical documentation should look like, because actually for me the interesting things started at the last
Exactly.
pages, like section 5. This is where it gets interesting. So hopefully they can expand on that a bit. But what I can also say is that as soon as you have parts where MDCG guidances get kind of condensed and short, this is also the things that is compromise text. So that also means there was usually a compromise within the MDCG, and that they just can't be more specific at that moment. And of course you can say, well, you have to be more specific, but it's not going to happen. So
Oh, great.
and also it means that you can also do your best to be more specific yourself with good argumentation, right? I mean, guidance is in the end guidance.
Exactly. I think it's a good point. And as said, mainly to summarize, there is a lot of logical on this. There are more details maybe on how people will be interpreting some of those elements, but all the rest is really logical. And I hope this will be pushing maybe more discussion, more opportunities also for manufacturers, for suppliers, for smartphone companies, etc. Or those because it's not only smartphone, as you said, there are a lot of wearables or other things that are also in place. So
Totally.
it's just that we have really to have a full discussion, and I suppose the MDCG also tried by this guidance to open the discussion, open those opportunities, which is good also. So, anything else from your side?
Well, I mean, I think actually, as far as, although there are quite a lot of haters around, I think as far as MDCG guidances goes, this is actually a really good one. And I would invite people to, on the one hand, be wise in the sense that know the underlying legislation, so you can also apply the MDCG guidance better. So really think about, what does risk management in combination of a software device with a hardware component, what does it mean? What kind of risks would you need to manage, and why? And how would you validate performance? And these are things that are mentioned in the MDCG document. These were requirements that have been in there since almost 2012 when the proposal came out. So I mean, these are things that people can really think about already. And on the other hand, also have some imagination, in the sense that you shouldn't allow yourself to be funneled too much into a particular frame of mind by as a result of what people basically perceive. I've seen people call them like fixed pathways for certain configurations, and really I don't think that the MDCG intended it that way, but rather wanted to be practical and give people examples. So it doesn't mean that these are the only possible combinations, for example, or if there is a combination you have to do it exactly this way. Now, rather, what they do is they try to show people that if this is your combination, then this is what that implies. So
no, I think it's a good thing. Yeah, good conclusion. And as said, MDCG tries to do their best to help with what they know and what they want to do. And there is always a fine line between giving too much and giving too less. So it's why we have really to comment, yes, open the discussion, make some debate, and maybe, as you've said, a version 2 will come out with maybe some changes or no changes, but ideas just to open the debate also, which is I think a great point here.
More passion, more footwork, more energy on LinkedIn.
Exactly. More positivity also. Let's try to make that.
Yes, less drama and more imagination, please.
I think it's great. Okay, then, Erik, thank you. Are you planning maybe a blog post, because you have your blog that is really also planning a lot of things? So are you planning a blog post for that, or?
Probably not, because I actually think that this document is doesn't really
provide anything additional. So,
I don't think it's really that new. I mean, the fact that it exists is news. Now, rather, I am working like crazy on the 3rd edition of my book, which is supposed to do the rest of 2022 and also 2023. So actually, my paralegal right over there is slaving away at incorporating another 100 pages of substantive addition to the book. So I'm working on that. And as we just discussed, I mean, the last few months were just absolutely freaking crazy in conference travel and so on. So I've spent so much time on that actually, but I am working on one blog though, and I'm curious what you think of it. It's a blog about the use of definitions, because I find that there's so many companies and people are not that aware of which terms are defined and which ones are not. They use them very loosely, and sometimes they use them in a way that they are actually not defined. So I'm writing a post now on basically to ask attention to. I was planning to call it words have meaning, and definitions definitely do, because people tend to use definitions really loosely, which you should never do. I mean, I've had cases where people, for example, they get in trouble with the notified body because they call something a kit, and then the notified body is like, oh, if it's a kit, then we need to see this, and this, and this. And they're like, nasty notified body, they are torpedoing our application. And I say, and then Erik, can we sue them? And well, probably not, because I mean, it's like going to a notified body and say, here, I have a beautiful llama. Can you please conformity assess my llama? And then you have like a cow with extra hair on it. And then here is my llama. And the notified body says, I don't think this is a llama, especially because just because you call it a llama, this is clearly a cow. And also, by the way, the milk quantity specifications are completely wrong, because llamas don't give that much milk. But it always, these kind of, basically use of definitions always ends in tears. Accessory is also such a completely abused word. As soon as a client says accessory to me, then I always say, like, how do you mean? And they're like, well, like an accessory, yes, like a defined concept, or is this colloquial use of the word? And then they're like, huh? And then you're now like, oh, okay, this is going to be a problem.
No, it's clear, and so the first article, so of the article 2 even of the MDR is always missed. And the point is also that you have this article where it's talking about the definition, but then MDCG adds another level with the definition. So it's also a bit weird sometimes.
Just read like the IVDR classification guidance. I think that's the record holder for the most additionally introduced definitions of any MDCG document. Or how about common specifications that also come up with like a whole bunch of additional definitions? So I know it's confusing for people, but still, I mean, it's if you do mathematics, people also understand that there are certain conventions that you have to work with, and if things are defined, or like in a computer program, if you define something, you have to use it like that. And then
So I hope people will be looking at your blog. Then I will put also everything on the show notes, and then they can see maybe this specific article on definitions and help them also to then overcome all those kind of things.
These are basically my biggest recommendations of the moment. Read Article 2, both of the MDR and the IVDR, so understand which words have specific meaning, and read the Blue Guide. That's the party line forever.
Exactly. So I'll put everything on the show notes. Also Blue Guide then on the show notes for the people. Okay, then, Erik, really was a pleasure. I hope now people have a good understanding of the MDC 2023-4. I hope,
or maybe they hate me more. That's also possible, because I don't.
You cannot have everybody likes you, so even me. So it's why
exactly
it's fine. Okay, then. Thank you very much, and let's maybe have another podcast when maybe there will be a new version of another MDCG that is controversial from other people. So
I don't expect. Well, I mean, the authorized representative is coming up as a new one, so that's going.
Let me read it, and then maybe you can see if there is any debate on LinkedIn about that again.
I hope they manage to do it before the Team PRC event.
Yeah, true that we are also going both at the Team PRC event in November 16th and 17th in Strasbourg. So don't hesitate to come to us also if you have any question there.
If you are PRC, then seek us out at that event.
Exactly. Yeah. Good. So, Erik, thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
Take care. You too.
Bye-bye.